Imagine waking up one morning to discover that nearly everything you've spent your entire life building is about to disappear. Your company is days away from running out of money. Investors have stopped answering your calls. Employees aren't sure if they'll receive another paycheck. The world's financial system is collapsing around you, and the media has already decided you're finished. Most people would cut their losses. Most people would walk away. But Elon Musk wasn't most people. In late 2008, there was a very real possibility that Tesla would become just another failed startup buried beneath the wreckage of the global financial crisis. No billion-dollar valuation, no electric vehicle revolution, no trillion-dollar company, no Model S, no Model 3, no superchargers stretching across continents. Nothing. Had events unfolded just slightly differently, the company that would later force the entire automotive industry to reinvent itself might have vanished before producing a single successful mass-market vehicle. Today, it's almost impossible to imagine a world where electric cars aren't at the center of the automotive conversation. Every major manufacturer, from luxury brands to economy car makers, is racing toward an electric future. But 2 decades ago, that future looked impossible. The idea that a tiny startup from Silicon Valley could compete against corporations that had spent over 100 years perfecting the automobile wasn't just unlikely, it sounded ridiculous. And yet that impossible idea would eventually become one of the greatest business gambles in modern history. This is the story of Tesla, and the man who was willing to risk everything to keep it alive. A world that didn't want to change. To understand why Tesla mattered, you first have to understand the world it was trying to enter. For more than a century, the automobile industry had been one of the most unforgiving businesses on earth. Countless entrepreneurs had tried to challenge the established giants. Almost all of them failed. Building a successful car company wasn't like launching a software startup. It required billions of dollars, enormous factories, global supply chains, safety regulations, manufacturing expertise, dealer networks, and years, sometimes decades, before turning a profit. History had been ruthless. Many ambitious automakers had appeared with bold promises, only to disappear under crushing financial pressure. Even companies backed by experienced executives and wealthy investors often found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of manufacturing automobiles at scale. Meanwhile, Detroit had become the symbol of industrial power. Companies like Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler dominated American roads, while manufacturers from Japan and Europe had established reputations for quality, efficiency, and reliability. These companies weren't simply selling vehicles, they had perfected an ecosystem that newcomers couldn't easily replicate. Factories produced millions of cars every year. Suppliers operated with extraordinary precision. Dealers stretched across entire countries. Consumers trusted familiar names. No one was waiting for an unknown startup from California, especially not one making electric cars. The electric car's bad reputation. Electric vehicles weren't a new invention. In fact, they were older than many people realize. More than 100 years ago, electric cars briefly competed with gasoline-powered automobiles. They were quiet, clean, and easy to operate. But they suffered from one fatal weakness: batteries. As gasoline engines became more efficient and fuel became widely available, electric vehicles slowly disappeared. For decades afterward, they remained little more than historical curiosities. Whenever large manufacturers experimented with electric cars, the results were disappointing. Limited driving range, long charging times, poor performance, high prices. Most consumers saw them as compromises rather than genuine alternatives. Even environmental concerns weren't enough to change public opinion. If someone mentioned electric vehicles in the early 2000s, many people imagined slow, awkward commuter cars built more for making a statement than for enjoying the drive. The idea of an electric sports car? That sounded almost laughable, and that assumption would become Tesla's greatest opportunity. Because sometimes, the biggest advantages come from solving problems everyone else has already given up on. A boy who refused to think small long before he became one of the most recognizable entrepreneurs on Earth, Elon Musk was simply a quiet boy growing up in Pretoria, South Africa. He wasn't known for athletic ability. He wasn't especially popular. Instead, he spent countless hours reading. Books became an escape, but they also became an education. Science fiction, engineering, physics, history, biography. By some accounts, he read so much that local librarians knew him by name. Those stories planted a powerful idea. Technology wasn't just about making money, it could reshape civilization itself. As a teenager, Musk taught himself computer programming. Without formal instruction, he wrote code and eventually created a simple video game called Blaster, which he sold to a computer magazine while still in his teens. It wasn't a fortune, but it proved something important. Ideas could become products, products could become businesses, and businesses could change lives. South Africa, however, wasn't where he imagined building that future. He believed the center of innovation was somewhere else. First Canada, then the United States. The move wasn't easy. He worked odd jobs, studied relentlessly, and searched for opportunities that others overlooked. What set Musk apart wasn't simply intelligence, it was scale. Even in his 20s, he wasn't talking about building a comfortable career. He wanted to solve civilization-sized problems. The first fortune. The internet boom of the 1990s created opportunities unlike anything the business world had seen before. Musk recognized that shift early. Together with his brother, he co-founded Zip2, a company providing online business directories and mapping software at a time when many newspapers were only beginning to understand the internet's potential. The company grew quickly. Eventually, it was acquired, making Musk a millionaire before the age of 30. For many people, that would have been the finish line. Instead, it became the starting point. His next venture focused on something even more ambitious: online banking. The company would eventually become part of PayPal, one of the businesses that fundamentally changed digital payments. When PayPal was acquired by eBay in 2002, Musk walked away with roughly $180 million before taxes. Suddenly, he had something most dreamers never receive: the resources to pursue almost any idea imaginable. Luxury homes, private islands, early retirement. He could have chosen any of them. He chose none. Instead, he asked a question that would define the rest of his life. What problems are so important that they're worth dedicating everything to solving? His answers were surprisingly few: sustainable energy, space exploration, artificial intelligence, the future of humanity. Those goals sounded impossibly ambitious. Most people assumed they were fantasies. Musk viewed them as engineering problems waiting to be solved. A tiny startup with a dangerous idea. Around this same time, deep inside Silicon Valley, another ambitious idea was beginning to take shape. It wasn't backed by Detroit. It wasn't started by one of the world's largest automakers. And contrary to popular belief, it wasn't founded by Elon Musk. A pair of entrepreneurs believed something almost everyone else in the automotive world dismissed. If advances in lithium-ion batteries could power laptops, perhaps they could power cars. Not slow electric cars, not compromised vehicles, fast ones, beautiful ones. Cars that people would desire. Not because they were environmentally friendly, but because they were simply better. It was an audacious idea. One that would require extraordinary engineering, enormous amounts of money, and an almost irrational willingness to ignore conventional wisdom. At first, Elon Musk was only an investor, a wealthy entrepreneur looking for projects capable of changing the future. But before long, that investment would become something far more personal. It would consume his fortune, his reputation, his time, and nearly destroy him. Because within a few short years, Tesla wouldn't just become another company in Elon Musk's portfolio, it would become the greatest gamble of his entire life. And once he pushed all his chips to the center of the table, there would be no turning back. A company without its future leader. When people think of Tesla today, one name almost always comes to mind: Elon Musk. For many, the two have become inseparable. It's easy to assume that Musk started the company, sketched the first designs, and personally set everything in motion. But history is rarely that simple. Tesla's story began before Elon Musk became its driving force. In 2003, two Silicon Valley engineers, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, believed the automotive industry had become trapped by its own assumptions. Gasoline engines had improved for decades, but true innovation had slowed. Car makers competed over styling, horsepower, and luxury features, while one question remained almost untouched. What if the engine itself no longer needed gasoline? Rather than build another practical economy car, they made a surprisingly bold decision. Their first vehicle would be a sports car. It wasn't just an engineering choice, it was a psychological one. Most people associated electric vehicles with sacrifice, slow acceleration, limited range, tiny wheels, plastic interiors, cars you bought because you felt guilty about pollution. Eberhard believed that perception had to be destroyed before electric cars could ever become mainstream. If people fell in love with an electric sports car, everything else could follow. The company needed a name powerful enough to match that ambition. They chose Tesla, honoring the brilliant inventor Nikola Tesla, whose work on alternating current transformed the modern electrical world decades before the automobile became dominant. The mission was elegantly simple: build an electric sports car. Use the profits to build more affordable vehicles. Then repeat the process until electric transportation became available to everyone. It sounded brilliant. It also sounded impossibly expensive. Enter Elon Musk. Fresh from the sale of PayPal, Elon Musk wasn't searching for another ordinary investment. He wanted missions, ideas capable of changing entire industries. Around 2004, Tesla caught his attention. Unlike many investors, Musk wasn't interested in quarterly profits or quick exits. He believed that sustainable transportation wasn't just another business opportunity, it was inevitable. The only question was, who would get there first? Musk invested more than $6 million in Tesla's first major funding round, becoming its largest shareholder and chairman of the board. At first, his role seemed straightforward: provide capital, offer strategic guidance, help recruit talent. The day-to-day operations remained in the hands of Tesla's founders. But from the beginning, Musk wasn't a passive investor. He attended engineering meetings, questioned technical decisions, challenged assumptions, demanded better solutions. Many employees admired his relentless standards. Others found them exhausting. There was one quality almost everyone agreed on: he refused to accept the phrase, "That's impossible." Building the Roadster. Tesla's first product would become known as the Roadster. On paper, the concept looked revolutionary: a sleek, lightweight sports car capable of accelerating like a supercar while producing zero tailpipe emissions. Instead of inventing an entirely new battery chemistry, Tesla made a controversial decision. It would use thousands of small lithium-ion battery cells, the same type found in consumer electronics, combined into one massive battery pack. The idea seemed risky. Critics warned that the batteries could overheat. They questioned reliability. They questioned safety. Some questioned whether the car would work at all. Tesla's engineers faced challenge after challenge. Battery management systems had to be invented, cooling systems redesigned, power electronics engineered almost from scratch. Every breakthrough seemed to reveal three new problems waiting underneath. And unlike software companies, there was no easy update. A mistake inside a vehicle traveling at highway speeds could become deadly. Perfection wasn't optional. The costs begin to spiral. As development continued, reality became increasingly unforgiving. Early estimates suggested the Roadster could be built for around $90,000. Then costs climbed. $100,000, $120,000. Higher still. Components that seemed affordable during early planning became vastly more expensive during production. Engineering delays multiplied. Suppliers struggled. Schedules slipped. Every additional month burned more cash. Investors grew nervous. Building cars turned out to be far harder than designing them. Software startups can release unfinished products and improve them later. Automobiles don't have that luxury. Every bolt, every wire, every airbag, every safety system, everything had to work perfectly before customers ever turned the key. Money disappeared at an alarming rate. Cracks inside the company. As pressure intensified, disagreements inside Tesla became impossible to ignore. The relationship between Elon Musk and CEO Martin Eberhard steadily deteriorated. Both men believed deeply in Tesla's mission, but they increasingly disagreed on how to achieve it: costs, deadlines, leadership, responsibility. The board became concerned. Delays continued, budgets exploded, confidence weakened. Eventually, Martin Eberhard stepped down as CEO. Several leadership changes followed in rapid succession, creating uncertainty throughout the company. For employees, it was unsettling. Projects continued, engineering continued, but no one seemed certain who would ultimately lead Tesla into the future. Gradually, the answer became obvious. Elon Musk wasn't content remaining in the background. Whether by necessity or by ambition, he was moving closer to the center. A perfect storm. Then came 2008, one of the darkest years in modern financial history. Banks collapsed. Mortgage markets imploded, credit froze, household wealth evaporated almost overnight. Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy. Financial institutions once considered untouchable suddenly disappeared. Investors everywhere stopped taking risks. Cash became king. For startups dependent on outside funding, it was catastrophic. Tesla wasn't profitable, not even close. The company relied almost entirely on investor confidence, and confidence had vanished. At exactly the same time, Elon Musk faced another crisis. His aerospace company, SpaceX, had suffered repeated rocket failures. Each launch had consumed tens of millions of dollars. Each explosion pushed the company closer to bankruptcy. Two companies, both burning extraordinary amounts of cash, both chasing dreams many considered impossible, both standing at the edge of collapse. Running out of time. By the second half of 2008, Tesla's financial situation had become desperate. Payroll itself became uncertain. Employees wondered whether they should begin searching for new jobs. Suppliers demanded payment, production targets slipped further behind schedule. Some investors simply refused to contribute more money. The logic seemed obvious. Why keep investing in a company that might not survive the year? Elon Musk faced an impossible decision: protect his remaining fortune or gamble nearly everything. Friends warned him to stop. Financial advisors urged caution. From the outside, walking away seemed rational. He had already accomplished more than most entrepreneurs ever dream of. He had wealth, recognition, freedom. No one would have blamed him for letting Tesla fail. Instead, he reached for his own bank account again and again and again. Nearly every dollar of liquid cash he could access went back into Tesla. At the same time, he continued funding SpaceX. He borrowed money, sold assets, accepted personal financial risk, that most billionaires spend their lives avoiding. At one point, according to multiple accounts from those close to him, Musk was borrowing money for personal living expenses while pouring nearly everything else into his companies. It was no longer investing, it was survival. Christmas Eve. As Christmas approached in 2008, Tesla's future came down to days, not months, days. Negotiations with investors stretched into the holidays. Lawyers worked late into the night. Executives waited anxiously for signatures that might never arrive. If the funding failed, Tesla would almost certainly enter bankruptcy. Years of engineering, hundreds of employees, a revolutionary vision gone. Then, at the last possible moment, the deal came together. New investment arrived. Tesla survived, barely. The company had escaped disaster, not because success was guaranteed, but because enough people were willing to believe that the future was still worth betting on. For Elon Musk, the relief was short-lived. Keeping Tesla alive was only the beginning. Now he had to prove the company could actually become what it had always promised to be. An electric car company wasn't enough anymore. Tesla had to become a real automaker, one capable of competing against companies 100 times its size. And that challenge would be even harder than surviving bankruptcy. Proving the impossible surviving bankruptcy is one thing. Proving the critics wrong is something else entirely. By early 2009, Tesla had managed to stay alive, but just barely. The company still wasn't profitable. It had burned through enormous amounts of capital. Its leadership had changed multiple times, and much of the automotive industry still viewed it as an overhyped Silicon Valley experiment. To many executives in Detroit, Tesla wasn't a threat. It was a curiosity, a startup building expensive toys for wealthy tech enthusiasts. Even those who admired the company's ambition doubted it could survive long enough to become a real automaker. After all, history wasn't on Tesla's side. Building one impressive prototype is difficult. Building thousands of reliable vehicles is an entirely different challenge. Tesla had survived its first great gamble. Now it had to prove that electric cars could do something no one believed possible. Not just compete with gasoline cars, outperform them. The Roadster changes the conversation. The Tesla Roadster was never meant to become a mass-market car. In fact, that was never its purpose. It was a statement, a proof of concept, a machine designed to destroy decades of assumptions about electric vehicles. When customers finally got behind the wheel, something unexpected happened. The silence was the first surprise. Unlike traditional sports cars, there was no roaring engine, no vibration, no dramatic exhaust note. Instead, there was an eerie calm. Then came the acceleration. The instant torque delivered by the electric motor launched the car forward with breathtaking speed. There were no gear changes, no delay, just immediate power. Drivers who expected a slow, environmentally friendly commuter car suddenly found themselves experiencing performance that rivaled exotic sports cars. For the first time, many people realized that electric vehicles didn't have to be boring. They could be exciting. The Roadster wasn't perfect. Its interior received criticism. Its price placed it far beyond the reach of most consumers. Production numbers remained relatively small, but perfection had never been the goal. Changing minds was. And in that regard, the Roadster succeeded beyond expectations. Suddenly, the question was no longer whether electric cars could be fast. The question became, what if this technology kept improving? A bigger dream. For Elon Musk, the Roadster represented only the first step. He had always envisioned Tesla following a master plan. Start with an expensive, low-volume sports car. Use the profits and experience to build a premium sedan. Then use that success to create affordable vehicles for the mass market. Each generation would finance the next. It sounded simple. In reality, it required extraordinary patience and even more money. The next project would determine whether Tesla became a real company or remained a fascinating footnote in automotive history. That project was the Model S. Unlike the Roadster, the Model S couldn't rely on novelty. It had to compete directly with luxury sedans from brands that had spent generations earning customers' trust. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Audi, Lexus, companies with global manufacturing operations, decades of engineering experience, and loyal customer bases. Tesla had none of those advantages. It had one chance to convince the world that a startup could build a better luxury car than companies that had defined the category. Failure wasn't just possible, it was expected. Building a car from the ground up. Most new car companies begin by borrowing existing technology, shared platforms, existing engines, common components. Tesla chose a far more difficult path. The Model S would be designed almost entirely from scratch. The battery pack would be integrated into the floor, lowering the vehicle's center of gravity and improving handling. Without a large gasoline engine under the hood, designers suddenly had more freedom than traditional automakers had enjoyed for over a century. The front of the car now contained something unusual, a second trunk. Soon nicknamed the Frunk. Inside, the cabin felt dramatically different. Instead of dozens of buttons scattered across the dashboard, Tesla centered the experience around a massive touchscreen. At the time, many experts considered it a risky decision. Would drivers accept such a radical interface? Could software replace decades of traditional automotive design? Tesla believed it could, because Musk wasn't trying to build a better version of an old car. He wanted to redefine what a car could be, buying a factory. Nobody wanted. But designing a vehicle was only half the battle. Someone still had to build it. Mass production is where countless automotive startups have failed. Manufacturing millions of precisely engineered components requires an extraordinary level of coordination. One mistake repeated thousands of times becomes a disaster. Fortunately for Tesla, opportunity arrived during another company's hardship. A massive automobile factory in Fremont, California, once operated jointly by Toyota and General Motors, had been shut down during the financial crisis. The facility had once employed thousands of workers. Now it sat largely empty. For many companies, it represented a painful reminder of economic collapse. For Tesla, it represented possibility. In 2010, Tesla acquired the factory for a fraction of what it would have cost to build a new one. The scale was staggering. Assembly lines stretched across enormous buildings. Industrial robots towered above the production floor. There was only one problem. The factory had been built for companies producing hundreds of thousands of vehicles. Tesla was producing only a tiny fraction of that. Maintaining such a massive facility would place enormous pressure on a company that was still fighting for survival. Yet Musk believed something that many investors didn't. If Tesla truly intended to change the world, it couldn't think like a startup forever. It had to start thinking like a global manufacturer. Cars that never stopped improving. Perhaps Tesla's most revolutionary idea wasn't hidden beneath the hood. It lived inside the software. For more than a century, buying a car followed a simple rule. Once you drove it home, it was essentially frozen in time. If manufacturers wanted to improve something, they had to wait until next year's model. Tesla challenged that assumption. Using over-the-air software updates, the company could improve vehicles long after customers purchased them. New features, performance improvements, navigation updates, bug fixes. Sometimes owners woke up to discover their cars had become faster overnight. It was a concept borrowed from the technology industry, not the automotive world. Traditional manufacturers struggled to understand it. Tesla no longer viewed cars as finished products. They were evolving platforms, machines that could continuously improve. That philosophy would become one of the company's greatest competitive advantages. Because while rivals built automobiles, Tesla was building computers on wheels, solving the biggest fear. There was still one enormous obstacle standing between electric vehicles and widespread adoption: range anxiety. Even people who admired Tesla worried about one simple question: what happens when the battery runs out? Gasoline stations existed almost everywhere. Charging stations did not. Without reliable infrastructure, many customers would never consider switching. Tesla refused to wait for governments or oil companies to solve the problem. Instead, it began building its own solution. The supercharger network, fast charging stations strategically placed along major travel routes. The idea wasn't simply to sell cars, it was to create confidence. Owners could now travel hundreds of miles knowing another charger was waiting ahead. This required enormous investment. Building charging infrastructure generated little immediate profit. Most companies would have considered it someone else's responsibility. Tesla treated it as essential because Musk understood something fundamental. A revolutionary product means very little if people are afraid to use it. Winning over the skeptics. When the Model S finally reached customers, something remarkable happened. The reviews weren't merely positive, they were extraordinary. Automotive journalists praised its acceleration, technology, safety, and driving experience. Many reviewers called it one of the best cars ever built, regardless of how it was powered. Awards followed. Public perception began to shift. Investors who once questioned Tesla's survival now saw something entirely different. Not an electric car company, a technology company reinventing transportation. Tesla's stock began climbing, customers lined up. Competitors quietly started paying attention. Behind closed doors, executives at established automakers began asking uncomfortable questions. What if this startup wasn't a temporary disruption? What if this was the future? The industry awakens for decades. The automotive world had followed familiar rules. Incremental improvements, predictable product cycles, conservative innovation. Tesla ignored all of them. Its cars received software updates like smartphones. Its charging network expanded rapidly. Its vehicles accelerated faster than many supercars while producing no tailpipe emissions. Suddenly, the company everyone had laughed at was forcing billion-dollar corporations to reconsider strategies they had spent decades perfecting. The impossible was beginning to look inevitable. But success brought a new kind of pressure. Customers wanted more cars. Investors wanted faster growth. Wall Street expected impossible numbers. And Elon Musk wasn't satisfied with selling tens of thousands of vehicles. He wanted millions. There was only one problem: Tesla had never built cars at that scale. The next challenge wouldn't be engineering, it would be manufacturing. And it would become one of the most painful chapters in the company's history, because building a revolutionary car was far easier than building hundreds of thousands of them. The next mountain. By the middle of the 2010s, Tesla had achieved something few believed possible. It had survived. It had built a critically acclaimed luxury sedan. It had convinced millions of people that electric vehicles could outperform gasoline cars. For almost any other company, that would have been enough. But Elon Musk wasn't interested in building a niche luxury brand. His ambition had always been much larger. He wanted to replace the gasoline car. Not for a few thousand wealthy customers, for the entire world. And that meant one thing. Tesla had to stop thinking in thousands of cars. It had to think in millions. That single shift in ambition would unleash one of the most chaotic periods in modern manufacturing history. The Gigafactory vision. There was a problem hiding inside every electric vehicle: the battery. Not the technology itself, but the scale. Every car Tesla produced required thousands of battery cells, and global production simply wasn't large enough to support Musk's long-term vision. If Tesla wanted to build millions of cars every year, Someone first had to build billions of battery cells. Waiting for suppliers wasn't an option. So Musk proposed another radical idea. Tesla would build one of the largest battery factories ever conceived. The name sounded almost fictional. The Gigafactory. When the project was announced, many analysts questioned whether it was unnecessarily ambitious. The projected cost ran into billions of dollars. The factory itself would cover millions of square feet. Critics wondered why a company that had nearly gone bankrupt just a few years earlier was attempting such a colossal project. But Musk saw something others didn't. He believed that controlling battery production would reduce costs dramatically, improve efficiency, and protect Tesla from supply shortages. It wasn't just about building batteries, it was about controlling the future of electric transportation. Construction began in the Nevada desert. At the time, it looked almost absurd. A partially completed structure surrounded by empty land. But Musk wasn't building for the present. He was building for a future that didn't exist yet. The $35,000 promise. If the Roadster had proven electric cars could be exciting, and the Model S had proven they could be luxurious, the next vehicle had to prove they could be affordable. Tesla announced the Model 3, a sedan designed for the mass market. Its target price, around $35,000, captured global attention. The response was unlike anything the automotive industry had ever seen. Customers lined up outside Tesla stores before the car even existed. Some camped overnight, others waited for hours just to place a refundable deposit. Within days, hundreds of thousands of reservations poured in, without a single television commercial, without traditional advertising. The excitement generated billions of dollars in potential future sales. It was one of the largest product launches in automotive history. But beneath the celebration, a terrifying question remained. How do you actually build that many cars? Production hell. The answer, it turned out, was painfully. Inside Tesla, the phrase became legendary. Production hell. Factories struggled to keep pace, robots malfunctioned, assembly lines stopped unexpectedly, components arrived late, entire sections of manufacturing had to be redesigned while production was already underway. The pressure became relentless. Every delay disappointed thousands of waiting customers. Every missed production target shook investor confidence. Wall Street began predicting disaster once again. Some analysts argued Tesla had expanded too quickly. Others insisted the company had reached its limit. Elon Musk later admitted that Tesla had made one critical mistake. It had attempted to automate too much. Robots were performing tasks that humans could accomplish more efficiently. Ironically, the company trying to build the factory of the future discovered that human flexibility still mattered. Entire production systems had to be rebuilt. Engineers worked around the clock. Temporary assembly lines were even constructed inside massive tents outside the main factory. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't conventional, but Tesla kept building. Sleeping at the factory. As deadlines slipped, Elon Musk made an unusual decision. He moved into the factory. Instead of commuting from home, he slept on the production floor. Sometimes on a couch, sometimes beneath his desk, sometimes in conference rooms. According to Musk, he wanted employees to know that no one was working harder than he was. Whether people admired the gesture or criticized it as unsustainable, it became symbolic of Tesla's culture. The company expected extraordinary commitment. Engineers often worked exhausting hours. Managers solved problems in real time. Production teams adapted constantly. The atmosphere resembled a startup fighting for survival rather than a mature automaker. Every vehicle leaving the assembly line represented another step away from failure, another step toward proving the skeptics wrong. Wall Street's favorite target. While Tesla fought to increase production, another battle was unfolding on Wall Street. Few public companies attracted as much criticism as Tesla. Short sellers, Investors who profit when a company's stock declines became increasingly vocal. They argued Tesla's valuation made no sense. The company wasn't consistently profitable, manufacturing remained unstable, competition was growing, some predicted bankruptcy within months. Television commentators debated whether Tesla had become the largest financial bubble in the automotive industry. Every missed deadline fueled new headlines. Every production problem became breaking news. Many investors stopped asking whether Tesla would dominate the future. They simply wondered whether it would survive the year. The pressure affected employees. It affected customers. And it certainly affected Elon Musk. Funding secured. Then came one of the most controversial moments in Tesla's history. On August 7, 2018, Elon Musk posted a message on social media that immediately shook financial markets. He wrote that he was considering taking Tesla private at $420 per share. Then came the phrase that would become famous: funding secured. Tesla's stock surged. Investors scrambled to understand what was happening. Had one of the world's most closely watched public companies really secured financing for one of the largest buyouts in history? As regulators investigated, serious questions emerged. Was the financing actually guaranteed? Or had Musk spoken too soon? The controversy quickly escalated. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a lawsuit alleging that Musk's statements had misled investors. The dispute was eventually settled. Musk stepped down as Tesla's chairman for a period, though he remained CEO. Tesla and Musk also paid financial penalties without admitting or denying the allegations. The episode became a defining example of Musk's unconventional communication style. To supporters, it demonstrated transparency and boldness. To critics, it highlighted impulsiveness. Either way, it reinforced one undeniable truth. Tesla wasn't just another car company. It had become one of the most closely watched businesses on the planet. The turning point for years, critics repeated the same argument. Tesla could build exciting cars, but it could never become consistently profitable. Then, the numbers began to change. Quarter after quarter, Tesla improved. Production increased. Delivery records were broken, revenue climbed. Costs gradually fell as manufacturing became more efficient. Then came the moment investors had waited years to see. Tesla reported consecutive profitable quarters. The narrative shifted almost overnight. The company once described as perpetually on the edge of bankruptcy suddenly appeared capable of generating sustainable profits. Wall Street's perception transformed. Institutional investors who had avoided Tesla began buying shares. Its stock price climbed at an astonishing pace. Within a relatively short period, Tesla's market value surpassed that of some of the world's largest and oldest automakers, despite producing only a fraction of their vehicles. To supporters, it reflected belief in Tesla's future. To skeptics, it reflected excessive optimism. But regardless of opinion, the company that nearly collapsed in 2008 had become one of the most valuable automakers in history. A new kind of empire, Tesla, was no longer fighting simply to survive. It was expanding across continents. New Gigafactories were planned in China, then Germany, then Texas. Each factory represented more than increased production. They represented independence, control, scale. The vision that once seemed impossible was beginning to take physical form. Yet with success came a different challenge. Tesla had inspired an entire industry. Every major automaker was now investing billions into electric vehicles. New startups emerged with ambitious promises. China's manufacturers accelerated at remarkable speed. The company that had once been the outsider suddenly had something it had never faced before: real competition. Tesla had forced the world to embrace electric transportation. Now it had to prove it could remain the leader in the revolution it had started. Because changing history is one thing. Staying ahead after everyone else joins the race is something else entirely. The company that refused to stay in one lane. By the early 2020s, Tesla had accomplished what many believed was impossible. It had transformed from a struggling startup into one of the most valuable companies on Earth. Factories operated across multiple continents. Millions of vehicles were traveling on roads around the world. The same executives who once dismissed electric cars were now investing hundreds of billions of dollars to catch up. From the outside, it looked like Tesla had won. But Elon Musk didn't see Tesla as a car company. Not really. To him, cars were only one piece of a much larger puzzle. The mission had never been simply to build better automobiles. The mission was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And if that was truly the goal, then transportation was only the beginning. Beyond the car, imagine an ordinary suburban neighborhood. The sun rises. Solar panels on rooftops quietly generate electricity throughout the day. Instead of sending all that energy back to the grid, homeowners store it inside large battery systems installed in their garages. As evening arrives, those batteries continue powering homes long after the sun has disappeared. The family's electric vehicle charges overnight using stored renewable energy. The next morning, the cycle begins again. To Musk, this wasn't science fiction. It was the future Tesla was trying to build. That vision led Tesla far beyond automobiles. The company expanded into residential energy storage with products like the Powerwall, allowing homeowners to store electricity generated from solar panels. For businesses and utilities, Tesla developed much larger battery systems capable of stabilizing electrical grids and storing renewable energy on a massive scale. These projects didn't generate the same headlines as sports cars or stock prices, but they revealed something important. Tesla wasn't just selling products, it was attempting to redesign entire energy systems. The battery race. If there was one technology at the center of Tesla's future, it wasn't artificial intelligence, it wasn't autonomous driving, it wasn't robotics, it was batteries. Everything depended on making them better: longer range, lower cost, faster charging, greater durability. Every improvement changed the economics of electric vehicles. Tesla invested billions into battery research. Engineers searched for new materials. Manufacturing techniques evolved. Production became increasingly automated. The company even hosted presentations dedicated entirely to battery technology, events that many investors watched as closely as traditional product launches, because everyone understood the stakes. The company that mastered battery manufacturing wouldn't simply build better electric cars. It could reshape transportation, renewable energy, and power infrastructure around the globe. Teaching cars to drive. Then came one of Tesla's most ambitious and controversial projects: autonomous driving. For decades, self-driving cars had existed mostly in science fiction. Movies imagined highways filled with vehicles that required no human input. Reality proved far more complicated. Driving wasn't simply following painted lines. It meant interpreting unpredictable human behavior: rain, snow, construction zones, pedestrians, cyclists, animals, unexpected obstacles. Every mile presented new challenges. Tesla believed the solution would come through cameras, artificial intelligence, and enormous amounts of real-world driving data collected from vehicles already on the road. The company introduced a suite of advanced driver assistance features that gradually evolved under the name full self-driving, often shortened to FSD. Supporters viewed it as the future of transportation. Critics argued that the name itself created unrealistic expectations, since drivers still needed to remain attentive and ready to take control. Regulators closely monitored the technology. Investigations followed several high-profile crashes involving Tesla vehicles operating with driver assistance systems engaged. Each incident sparked debate. Was Tesla moving too quickly? Or was public scrutiny simply greater because the company had become so visible? Regardless of where opinions landed, one fact remained undeniable. Tesla had pushed autonomous driving into the center of the global conversation. The rise of artificial intelligence for Elon Musk, autonomous driving wasn't just about cars. It was an artificial intelligence problem. Teaching a machine to understand the real world required extraordinary computing power. Every second, a Tesla vehicle processed enormous amounts of visual information: road signs, traffic lights, lane markings, moving vehicles, human behavior. To improve these systems, Tesla invested heavily in its own AI infrastructure, including a supercomputer known as Dojo. Rather than relying entirely on outside technology providers, the company sought greater control over the hardware and software used to train its neural networks. The goal was ambitious: teach machines to perceive the world with a level of speed and consistency that could eventually rival, or perhaps even surpass, human drivers. Whether that goal would be achieved remained uncertain. But Tesla was betting billions that artificial intelligence would become as important to the future of transportation as the electric motor itself. A robot that looked like us then. Musk surprised the world once again. Instead of unveiling another vehicle, he introduced a humanoid robot known as Optimus. Tesla's robot was designed to perform repetitive, dangerous, or physically demanding tasks. At first, many people laughed. The announcement felt strangely disconnected from the company's core business. Why would an automaker build robots? Musk's answer reflected the same pattern that had defined his career. Tesla wasn't trying to become a better car company. It was trying to solve engineering problems wherever they existed. If the company could develop sophisticated artificial intelligence for autonomous vehicles, why couldn't that technology eventually power robots capable of working in factories, warehouses, or even homes? Early demonstrations generated excitement, but also skepticism. The technology remained in its infancy. Much work lay ahead before humanoid robots could become commercially viable. Still, Tesla had once been mocked for attempting to build electric sports cars. History suggested it might be unwise to dismiss ambitious ideas too quickly. The world catches up. For years, Tesla had been almost alone. Now, everyone wanted in. Legacy automakers announced multi-billion-dollar electric vehicle programs. Companies that had once argued consumers didn't want EVs suddenly promised all-electric futures. Startups appeared with bold claims. Governments introduced incentives. Charging infrastructure expanded. The global automotive industry entered one of the fastest technological transitions in its history. Perhaps no competitor grew more rapidly than China's BYD. Originally a battery manufacturer, BYD evolved into one of the world's largest producers of electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Its rapid expansion demonstrated that Tesla was no longer competing only against Detroit or Europe. The race had become global. Companies like Rivian targeted adventure vehicles. Lucid focused on premium luxury and long-range performance. Traditional manufacturers invested billions into their own electric platforms. The market Tesla had created was becoming increasingly crowded. The price war. As competition intensified, Tesla made another bold move. Instead of protecting high profit margins, the company repeatedly reduced vehicle prices. It was a risky strategy. Lower prices made electric cars more accessible to consumers. But they also placed pressure on profits. Some competitors struggled to match Tesla's pricing without losing money. Others delayed expansion plans. Industry analysts debated the long-term consequences. Was Tesla sacrificing profitability to protect market share? Or was it using its manufacturing advantages to make life increasingly difficult for rivals? The answer depended on whom you asked. But one thing became increasingly clear: the electric vehicle revolution had entered a new phase. Winning would no longer depend solely on innovation. It would depend on execution. Manufacturing, supply chains, cost control, software, artificial intelligence, every advantage mattered. A vision. Still unfinished by now, Tesla had become far more than the company that once struggled to sell an expensive sports car. It had influenced governments, forced legacy automakers to change course, accelerated investment in renewable energy, redefined consumer expectations for what a car could be. Yet Elon Musk rarely spoke as though the mission had been accomplished. Instead, he continued describing futures that many considered unrealistic. Millions of autonomous robo-taxis, humanoid robots assisting with everyday tasks, entire cities powered by renewable energy, interplanetary civilization. Some viewed these ideas as visionary. Others saw them as distractions. But regardless of opinion, Musk had established a remarkable pattern. He consistently aimed for goals so ambitious that they initially sounded absurd. Sometimes they failed, sometimes they took far longer than expected, and sometimes they reshaped entire industries. Still, success brought new questions. Could Tesla continue growing as competition intensified? Would artificial intelligence fulfill its promise? Could Musk balance ever-expanding ambitions with the demands of running one of the world's most scrutinized companies? Those questions remain unanswered, because Tesla's story is still being written. The cost of changing the world. There is a saying in business: success hides the scars. When people look at Tesla today, they see a company worth hundreds of billions of dollars. They see factories spread across continents, millions of vehicles on the road, and a CEO whose name has become known in almost every corner of the world. What they don't always see are the years when none of it seemed possible. The sleepless nights, the failed deadlines, the public criticism, the financial risks, the moments when even those closest to the company questioned whether it would survive another month. History has a way of making success look inevitable. It rarely is. Tesla's rise was anything but inevitable. It was built through thousands of decisions, countless engineering breakthroughs, painful mistakes, and an extraordinary willingness to take risks that most executives would never consider. A leader, unlike any other, Elon Musk has become one of the most polarizing business leaders of the 21st century. To his supporters, he represents the modern-day entrepreneur, a visionary willing to pursue problems others consider impossible, someone who ignores convention and refuses to accept limits imposed by tradition. To his critics, he represents something entirely different, a leader who overpromises, who sets unrealistic deadlines, who pushes employees beyond reasonable expectations, who often creates unnecessary controversy through his public statements. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Musk is that both perspectives contain elements of truth. He has made bold predictions that arrived years later than expected. Some have yet to materialize. He has faced criticism from regulators, investors, labor advocates, and competitors. His leadership style has been described as inspiring by some and exhausting by others. Yet throughout all of it, one characteristic has remained remarkably consistent. He refuses to think in small increments. While others ask how to improve something by 10%, Musk often asks how to reinvent it entirely. That mindset has produced spectacular successes. It has also produced spectacular failures, and perhaps neither can exist without the other. The company that forced an industry to change. Whether someone admires Tesla or dislikes it, its impact is impossible to ignore. Before Tesla, electric vehicles occupied a small corner of the automotive market. Many major manufacturers treated them as compliance projects, cars built primarily to satisfy regulations rather than to inspire customers. After Tesla, that changed. Today, nearly every major automaker has committed billions of dollars to electrification. Companies once devoted almost exclusively to internal combustion engines now compete to develop electric platforms, battery technology, and advanced software. Governments around the world have introduced policies encouraging cleaner transportation. Charging networks continue expanding across highways and cities. Consumers who once dismissed electric vehicles increasingly view them as practical and often desirable choices. Tesla didn't accomplish this transformation alone. Scientific advances, government policies, and the efforts of countless engineers and competing companies all played important roles. But Tesla accelerated a shift that many experts believed would take much longer. The company didn't invent the electric car, it changed how the world thought about it. More than an automaker. Perhaps Tesla's greatest contribution wasn't a single vehicle. It was a different way of thinking about products. For more than a century, automobiles had been treated as finished machines. Design them, build them, sell them, move on to next year's model. Tesla challenged that model. Its vehicles improved through software updates. Its engineers approached cars more like technology platforms than traditional automobiles. Features could evolve after purchase. Performance could improve without replacing hardware. The boundaries between automotive engineering and consumer technology began to blur. Today, many manufacturers are following a similar path. Software has become one of the industry's most valuable competitive advantages. The definition of a car continues to evolve. And once again, Tesla helped push that evolution forward. The questions that remain. Despite its remarkable achievements, Tesla's journey is far from complete. The company continues to face enormous challenges. Competition grows stronger every year. Battery technology continues evolving. Global economic conditions fluctuate. Consumer demand changes. Governments adjust regulations. Tesla also continues navigating questions surrounding autonomous driving. Supporters believe systems like full self-driving could eventually transform transportation, making travel safer and more efficient. Critics argue that significant technical, regulatory, and safety challenges remain before highly automated driving can become commonplace. The outcome is still uncertain. The same uncertainty surrounds Tesla's broader ambitions: energy storage, humanoid robotics, artificial intelligence. Each represents a market with tremendous potential, but also formidable obstacles. If history has taught us anything, it's this: predicting Tesla's future has rarely been easy. Looking back at the edge now, let's return to where this story began. Late 2008. The world was in financial crisis. Tesla was running out of money. SpaceX stood on the brink of failure. Elon Musk had invested almost everything he had. Imagine that moment unfolding differently. Imagine the funding never arrives. Tesla files for bankruptcy. The Roadster becomes little more than an interesting experiment. The Model S is never built. The Model 3 never reaches millions of drivers. The supercharger network never expands across continents. Perhaps another company eventually accelerates the electric vehicle revolution. Perhaps it takes another decade. Perhaps longer. No one can know for certain. But what is clear is that Tesla's survival changed the trajectory of the automotive industry. Sometimes history doesn't change because the largest company makes the safest decision. Sometimes it changes because a small group of people refuses to believe that the impossible should remain impossible. The gamble. When Elon Musk invested in Tesla, there was no guarantee of success. There was no roadmap, no proven business model for a modern electric vehicle startup, only a belief that transportation could be fundamentally different, that batteries would improve, that software would redefine automobiles, that consumers would eventually embrace change. Those beliefs demanded enormous sacrifices: money, time, reputation, comfort, years of uncertainty, and perhaps that's what makes Tesla's story so compelling. not because success was certain, but because failure always seemed close enough to touch. Every major breakthrough came with the possibility of collapse. Every victory followed another impossible challenge. The company didn't simply climb a mountain, it climbed one, only to discover another waiting behind it. The legacy long after today's headlines are forgotten, long after quarterly earnings fade into history. Tesla's true legacy may have very little to do with its stock price. It may be remembered for proving that industries which appear unshakable can, in fact, be disrupted. That a startup can challenge corporations more than a century old. That software can redefine machines people believed had already reached maturity. And that one bold idea, supported by relentless execution and a willingness to endure extraordinary risk, can force an entire world to rethink what it believes is possible. The road ahead remains uncertain. Competition will intensify. Technology will continue evolving. New winners will emerge. Some of Tesla's ambitions will succeed. Others may never materialize. That is the nature of innovation. But regardless of what comes next, the gamble has already changed the world. Closing every generation inherits technologies that seem permanent. Horse-drawn carriages once dominated the roads. Steam engines powered industry. Film cameras captured memories. Each eventually gave way to something new. For over 100 years, the gasoline engine appeared just as permanent. Then, a small startup from California challenged that assumption. It nearly failed more than once. It survived financial collapse, manufacturing disasters, public skepticism, and relentless competition. Against extraordinary odds, it endured, not because success was guaranteed, but because enough people believed that the future could be built differently. And perhaps that's the most important lesson hidden inside Tesla's story. History rarely belongs to those who wait for certainty. It belongs to those willing to risk everything before the rest of the world can see what they're building. Because every revolution begins the same way, with an idea that sounds impossible until one day it isn't. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more deep dives into the rise and fall of the world's greatest companies, visionary founders, and business empires, be sure to subscribe to Driven Empires. Because behind every empire, there's a story worth telling.